we discussing any of that stuff from the emails at the end? Or at the end? Okay. Okay. This thing is recording, so. Hey, Suzanne.
Hi, it's been a while.
I know it has. It's good to see you.
Good to see you too. So we didn't make the pancake breakfast either this morning.
Is Gracie going to come to the pool party this afternoon?
No, she's not able to today.
Okay.
But we'll get started back next week.
Oh, no worries. I went and got popsicles yesterday. I figured that was like a, good thing to have at a pool party, self-contained, individually wrapped.
Yeah.
All those sorts of.
How are y'all keeping them okay at the pool party? I mean, I guess.
I think I'm kind of leaving that up to Anna. I know Anna's gonna I think she's taking temperatures, and I'm not gonna put a lot of floats and stuff in the pool.
Yeah.
I don't like that anyway when I got a big group, because it kind of worries me that they're gonna put a float on top of somebody's head or something.
Yeah.
And I don't think we're gonna have that many, to be honest. I think Brad took Jake to the one in the summer. I think there were four kids.
Okay. Yeah.
So, and I kind of if they're covered in chlorine.
Yeah. It's just, it's hard to think about everything. I mean, I want her to be around other kids because we're doing school 100% virtual.
Okay. Yeah. Well, we're at school.
Okay.
But yeah, I have a friend who's a little bit older than me. She doesn't have any kids. She lives in South Carolina. And she's like, this hasn't really affected me. And she works from home. And I just wanted to go, how in the world has it not affected you? Because I was just like, everything takes so much longer. I was like, every decision I make, I don't go to the grocery store without thinking 4 steps.
Right.
It just floored me that, how is this not, I don't know. It's a totally different world.
I guess it does, when you have kids, it's more, the reason I picked 100% virtual is because, being a single mom to work and do school, I'm taking her to my mom's, my mom's a retired teacher, but she's 77. So I didn't want her being at school and then being with my mom. Yeah. So we decided to do that. So I'm lucky I have my mom to help her with school, because I don't know how I would do it just myself, but it still was not an easy decision because I worry about her not being around other kids. So I'm glad church, she can hopefully, be around.
I have a friend who's a nurse practitioner in Oxford, and she has people coming to her asking her what to do. And she's just there's no right answer for everybody.
Right.
And I just think my word has been grace through this whole thing. I haven't been on Facebook in about 4 weeks just because I don't want to hear what people are saying. I don't need the chatter. I just think we're all doing what's best for us, and we're all making the right decisions. And it's a time for grace, and it's a no judgment zone. My friend and I were everybody's doing the best that they can. And, if my 82-year-old mother lived with me, they might not be going to school.
Exactly. Yeah.
It would be a different situation, but, and we all have different school situations. We all have different situations, and we're all just doing the best that we can. And so
y'all been in school for this week? Did y'all
They started Wednesday.
Okay.
They started Wednesday.
School starts Monday.
Yeah, they started Wednesday, and I almost didn't know what to do with myself after I dropped them off. I was oh my gosh, I had the house to myself. I like didn't know what to do. It was just crazy.
Yeah.
So, but yeah,
Suzanne, what school system are y'all in?
We're in Germantown, at Houston Middle School. So they didn't expect so many people to sign up all virtual. And so they pushed school start out by 2 weeks so that they could plan for those of us that are going to be all virtual. So they don't start till Monday.
Okay. We're in Collierville, and we're doing all virtual as well. So
okay.
But high school starts tomorrow, middle school starts Tuesday, elementary starts Wednesday.
Okay. The
hybrid, they start different times this week as well.
Yeah. So. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I don't know how the all virtual is going to go, so I'm very hopeful. I mean, they look like they have a plan, but it's like, what do we do tomorrow? Kind of thing. I don't know if y'all feel that way too.
A little bit. We've gotten Braxton's schedule. We know some of the classes that Thatcher's in, but they said we would know before they start Tuesday. So I'm just like, all right, we're along for the ride.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's like some of the colleges. Clemson, they're not moving in until September right now at Clemson, because I get like the letters from the president. But I was surprised. I had friends who were moving kids into Georgia and Ole Miss yesterday on campus.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
which really surprised me. And then so the president's letter from Clemson was like, you're going to hear from us. We're still working out plans. They're going to have isolation rooms like on campus and off campus and just all this stuff. So
I don't know how I would feel if I had someone going to college right now. I mean, I saw Will took his girls to college too. So
yeah, I know he's taken the middle daughter to TCU. I don't know if the one's moved into Wofford yet or not. I don't know if they've gone to South Carolina. I don't know what they're doing. But yeah, because I was surprised because like I literally knew 2 people moving. I was like, I'm in a new stage in life when I know 2 people moving their kids into the honors colleges at college. I was like, okay, I'm in a new stage in life. But they were both moving their kids in the honors college at Georgia and Ole Miss yesterday.
Yeah.
But for the sake of those small towns, they kind of need it.
Right.
So it's it's just a mess. But so.
Well, it's good to see.
But yeah, it's been different. I mean, Jake's at Woodland, and I mean, I don't know what Jake's saying, but no 12-year-old boy's going to tell you they like school. At least mine's not. I don't know about Jake, but it's just different. I mean, they're in school, but it's still not the same.
Jake will tell you he loves school.
Oh, see, Jay, our 4th grader, loves it. He said on day 2, I've already learned more than I learned since in 2 months of school. He told you he learned more in 2 days than he learned in March and April.
Yeah, Jake is very happy.
Yeah. Charlie is happy.
I told him, I said, imagine this face staring at you every day to try to keep you accountable for doing schoolwork. And
but homework hasn't started, and Latin homework starts this week, so I'm not sure how happy they'll be when Latin homework starts this week.
No.
But no, our 4th grader is just thrilled. He's doing a little newspaper called the Floyd Times, and he's telling me about all our articles he's writing, and he's super excited. So the introvert, oddly enough, is the one who really needs school. He needs the people. So we don't know how long it'll last, but we're gonna ride it out as long as we can.
Along for the ride. There you go.
So, but anyway, well, I'm hoping some more people will come on board. I was telling Susan, I was emailing her, I was like, Susan and I had this outline that was going to last 4 weeks, and my topics today, I got to slide 25 and wasn't done, and I was like, okay, Susan, this might take 2 weeks. And she's like, go for it, it's fine. I did a really quick overview with Kevin, and it lasted 15 minutes, and he goes, yeah, you're not going to finish this tomorrow, don't even worry about it. And so Susan, I haven't even gotten to where I researched funerals and deaths yet, because I spent so much time doing everything else. So that'll definitely be next week. And then if anybody was able, and we'll wait and see what else comes in, but Will's sermon actually talked about Old Testament versus New Testament, and he really tied in some things today.
Jewish versus Christianity.
Jewish versus Christianity, and some of the things I'm talking about in slide 2, really went into what we were talking about. So, so Suzanne, to give you some background, we did an Old Testament study in the summer, not on Genesis, but Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, and so many questions about Judaism came out of that. And we've been considering like a world religions class anyway. So out of that, we were just like, well, this makes a lot of sense. And then we're going to do Hebrews, which Hebrews does a lot of throwbacks to the Old Testament anyway. So this is kind of bridging the gap. And it's been really interesting for me. And Susan did a lot of the history last week. So much of what we studied, over the summer really plays into it. And it's nice to kind of have some of that background, into this. And then with my study, it's been nice to kind of see some of that. But then I'm going into a little more like what I call the life cycle events. But we're going to spend some time talking about rabbis and synagogues and things like that today.
Well, I was really, because I got to do something with Gracie. I was really jumping in just to have a talk with y'all about how we're going to go forward with in-person Sunday school for our kids and trying to do online with us. And if anybody had any thoughts on how that.
Kevin's here.
Yeah.
So we've been.
Have you gotten any more information?
Well, I did run one of the Sunday school classes a few weeks ago from the church just to see how it worked. In our typical Sunday school class, I was the only one there, but it did work. I was able to connect to the Wi-Fi easily, so that is an option to do that. I would also talk to Will about it a little bit. He said the plan is to have TVs in each classroom and cameras to kind of help, facilitate the hybrid between at home as well as on-site Sunday school classes. But I don't think they're there yet. I don't know what the timeline is for all that stuff. So for now, I guess if you're at the church, you could certainly, go to the classroom if you want. The church will be open for that, and just log in from there. At least you're in the air conditioning. That's a plus instead of having to do it from your car or even from Starbucks or whatever like that.
Well, and I guess if we're, if we're not. If maybe we spread out in multiple rooms, if there's not a lot of people there, so that we're not all talking together. We don't.
Well, and you get that feedback.
Yeah, that's
you probably have noticed at the parent meeting last week, Will tried to log on while Aaron was logged on, and he got feedback. So you can't have two people logged in from two devices in the same room.
Right.
So, and Susan, I know y'all are working a lot with this, with the internet and the web and stuff like that. So if you have any, suggestions, I didn't know if they were gonna if we could project our screen. If that's the idea.
Yeah, I don't know. And I was talking to Lori, I guess, via email on Friday afternoon anyways. And she was asking, which Sunday school classes would be on site. And I told her, our Sunday school class is open. I certainly don't mind going up there and trying to help facilitate from the Sunday school class, but I am concerned about the feedback if we have multiple users. But I also asked, she's going to set up a sign up for our class anyways, because I would think they would need to know who's coming on campus, right? Just for the sheer number. I have no idea.
Contact tracing.
Exactly. Yeah. So they need some record, I'm sure. And I don't know how it's going to play out. And maybe nobody will sign up. I really don't know. But I just feel that, whatever, trying to be as accommodating as possible for everybody as we all try to figure out how we're going to make this work. Because I don't even know how much, how the attendance is going to be for the children's Sunday school classes. Or the youth Sunday school.
Yeah, classes. I mean, and they're setting up like a check-in station and sanitizing and masks.
So are they? See, I don't know any of that. Are they doing temperature checks and all that?
I can't remember. What did she say? Brooke, do you remember? Yeah, temperature check, sanitizing.
They all go in the front door and they get temperature check before they go up the stairs.
Okay, that's what it was. Okay.
Together. And then they're to wear masks the whole time. And I mean, it sounded like it was very well thought of, so I felt comfortable about it. And like I said, with Gracie, online school all the time, I mean, that was the one thing I was going to do because I felt like that was the safest place for her to be.
Well, and I feel, and Brooke and I talked this week, I feel more comfortable with them in Sunday school just because they're not moving around as much. Sunday schools, except for that breakfast, which we can talk about that later. But once they're in the classroom, it's just like a school classroom. They're going to be spread out. They're not a lot of moving around.
And I guess they have the space for it too.
Yeah, and they have the space. Right? Okay. And so.
Well, and it sounded like they were going to have youth group more like that, so they're not going to just be running around playing.
Yeah. It's going to be. And I think that's Anna's goal anyway. I think she wants youth group is going to be more structured. I don't think it's going to be. I hate to say freewheeling, but
they can be in the activity center and spread them way out, right? Or however much.
Yeah, but then that's not good for Zoom if
Well, if you're, yeah, that's true. If you're doing it online.
So
Yeah.
I mean,
there's
are all of y'all planning to go next week?
To be honest, personally, I've had so many decisions to have to make about school that I'm still trying to figure it out. Like we were talking, like life is just so much harder. Every decision takes longer. So, and with us hosting the pool party today, I focused on that and trying to make sure the house is clean and the procedures for that. So,
I don't know. I mean, we could do either one. I don't know.
Well, that most of y'all were saying no. That okay.
We don't know yet. We can't figure out how to make it all work in the morning.
Yeah.
The mornings, and selfishly, we want to keep doing this because we've done it all summer, but that's not fair to the kids. They need to, we need to figure it out. But I think kind of like Rebecca, we've had so many other decisions and stuff to make that we know that's next week. So we haven't really tried to figure out. I was hoping one of y'all had the right answer and could tell us.
That's what I was hoping too.
Well, what I'd like to do at least next week is let them try it online. Let's see how it works. And if that's not if they're not paying attention to it, I'd send them to homeschool.
yeah, I mean,
I'll take them up there. I mean,
yeah, like I said, I'm fine with either. I know I'll be leading, like Brooke, I was just telling them earlier, I know this study's going to last 2 weeks. So either way, I'm going to be at a computer leading this class somewhere next week. So whether that's on campus or at home, but I do want the children to get back into some sort of routine, whatever that is. And while it's really easy to watch service at home, I know personally I get distracted and they get distracted. And so we're losing some of that focus.
Yeah.
And I want that.
yeah. Oh, yeah. I'll get that in there next week. I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out this week.
Exactly.
To be continued. We'll figure it out. I don't know.
Okay.
Suzanne, did you take Gracie to the pancakes?
No, we didn't. She didn't feel good this morning. Yeah, she didn't feel good this morning, and I didn't push her. I mean, it's like school on top of trying to go to church was too much to try to figure out because she starts school tomorrow. So I just kind of let it go.
Yeah.
And then it sounded like a lot of y'all weren't going to be there anyway. So I didn't push it. So,
Gotcha.
well, since y'all are in the middle of a course, I'm probably going to drop off. It's good to see everybody. My other Sunday school doesn't start for a couple weeks too, so I'll just figure it out. You said y'all are going to study Hebrews. So I hadn't decided exactly, what they're going to be studying Romans. So, I just really wanted to do the study of John. So I'm going to just kind of come in and out based on what moves me to study.
Yeah,
so,
we're here.
But it's great to see everybody, and I'm sure, I'd like to, stay in the email list so that as we're figuring it out, y'all kind of let me know so that our kids will be together somehow.
Yeah,
so,
definitely.
All right.
Well, it's good to see you.
Everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Well, it's good to see her.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I felt like none of us had the right answer.
I mean, we have the answer that we're trying to figure it out. I mean, we're all in the same
I think everybody's got the right answer. You just got to do what you're comfortable with.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, none of this is permanent. If you get good feedback that it's super safe and, maybe you change your mind 2 or 3 or 4 weeks from now and feel compelled to do something different, I think.
I was telling Stacy this morning, my prayer is that our youth ministries staff and congregation don't get discouraged. I think you make a great point, Anthony, because there are going to be people that don't go. Probably me sometimes, if not most of the time. My family, I'm not trying to speak for the family, but I'm the only one here, so I'll speak for the family and say we're probably not going to do a lot of in-person stuff. And it's really tough because we're picking and choosing things in person, be it recreational, occasionally. It's like stabbing the knife, like, oh, we're good. We'll do that one. We're going to do this one. And I know this is a religious experience, so it's incredibly important. This is our faith life. But I told Stacy, I said, I just hope that Anna and, everybody involved doesn't get discouraged because, I know that Pastor Will probably doesn't like engaging on the internet, but he's engaging on the internet now more than ever by no choice of his own. So, I think that's the main focus we should all sort of look towards is just don't get discouraged because the goal is a year from now when we're not discouraged and we're back in the saddle and we're hopefully doing this like we used to do it, I guess, if that makes sense. So this is going to be the way it is.
Totally agree. And it felt the same way. I really don't want Anna to get an Aaron to get discouraged because the programming sounds good.
Yes.
But unfortunately, we went from like 0 to like 95 miles an hour with this. And and probably
We're on the same page, I think. Yeah.
Some words of encouragement from all of us that, however we can phrase it, sounds good. It just is or isn't right for us right now.
And it's a minute by minute, day by day thing.
Yeah, I mean, we could show up for one thing and then suddenly not come back.
And it's just a personal decision and how we're feeling at the moment. It's just.
And what's going on around us.
Yeah, and what's going on around us.
Well, we're just the opposite. I think the church is going way too fast with getting back together. Just for our family. We have to do so much travel and everything already. The risks are so high. While the social engagement is so important, and I can't wait till we get back to normal. For us, it's just that risk versus reward equation just does not add up.
Right.
It's too much of a risk. We're literally dealing with people's lives. And it's not just our own. It's caring for our neighbors. Again, just to offer another perspective, we're on the complete opposite end. I think the church is moving way.
I'm with you, Michael.
Yeah, I didn't want to say it quite that sternly, but I think that's kind of where we're at. Yeah.
Just opinion. I understand many ways to look at it, and that we may not be right. We may be on the wrong end of history on this one, but that's just where we're at right now. Is we're really pumping the brakes, and it's a lot. It's a lot in a short amount of time.
Yeah.
We appreciate it, and we want to support it, and this is our church, and we want to be there. Yeah, that's just not something we can get behind.
Yeah. Totally understand.
So this virtual stuff we love. This is working for us. It's good to have at least this interaction. These lug nuts get a little boring after a time.
I joke that if we were in person, we wouldn't see each other's faces because we'd all have masks on, so we can actually see each other's faces this way. That's the funniest part of the whole thing. So, but yeah. Okay, well, I think we're just going to go ahead and jump in. For those of you who jump on late, I've already talked to Susan. I know that my lesson itself is going to take 2 weeks, so this Judaism study may will last longer than 4 weeks. So Susan and I'll kind of get together and figure out how long. But I know what the research Susan's doing. I know the research I'm doing, and I know how much we like to talk, and I don't want to just rush right through it and not allow for talking.
Because there will be a test at the end.
We got the right credentials for the YouTube account from Lori. The ones I had were old. Anyway, we finally got it up. I'll send out last week's and then this week's once I get Rebecca's up, and we can.
Do you know how to record?
So people can go back.
Susan's recording.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Sorry.
So, okay, let's see. Okay, can y'all see that? Everybody okay? Okay. Okay, so we're going to start with this. The primary goal of Judaism is obedience to the covenant that God made with Moses and the people. And then I'm going to go straight into the second one because this really focuses. I don't know who saw Will's sermon today, and I can't see a lot of your hands, so feel free to talk just the way I'm sharing my screen. Will talked actually a lot in his sermon today about Old Testament and New Testament Judaism, Jesus
versus Christianity.
Christianity versus Judaism. And so this line, Judaism is focused on deeds, whereas Christianity is about our relationship with God and how that transforms us. Jewish people would never try to convert anyone. And I think, Susan, you may have mentioned this a little bit last week, but Will really focused about that they had been like persecuted, they were really kind of protecting themselves in a way, and so doing conversion was just not something they focused on, and so Will talked about that they really had to be insular to protect themselves, and I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, they were concerned about watering down their faith, and so by interacting with people outside of their tribe, for lack of a better word, would water it down, and so that's why they were so insular and so insulated from everybody else.
Yeah. So if anybody has anything to say about what you heard from Will's sermon today, I know how hard it is to watch from home and pay attention because there's distractions. But anyway, I just thought that was really nice that what we're doing had a direct relationship. So, and then they really focused on the Shema, which is Deuteronomy 6:4-5. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord alone. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength. So it's just the primary difference is so much on Christianity is focused on a relationship, and so much on Judaism is obedience. And I think there's just a really big thing. It's really obedience to the covenant. It's obedience to what they learned, what we call the Old Testament.
So do they, just, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Do they view it as like a one-way communication, whereas Christianity views it as a two-way communication?
Susan, I would kind of say so. Susan, do you? I know Susan's actually done a little more study on this than I have. It's more about obedience than it is.
But I mean,
being
told as opposed to okay.
Yeah.
I'm just curious.
One thing I don't like about sharing screen is I can't see all of your faces, so it's kind of driving me crazy. But
You're right. It's about obedience and in what you do instead of who you are.
Obedience and deeds.
Yeah, and how you treat your fellow human beings.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and like Will referenced what Jesus said today. He said it's more about what you say. He was telling the disciples it's more about what you say than what you eat. So he really referenced like the whole, and we're going to talk about the dietary laws in a minute, but it's really basically Jesus was telling the disciples in this new way, it's more about what you say than following these Old Testament commandments. He really made a reference to that.
He put it as more about what comes out of you rather than what goes into you.
Correct. That's exactly what Will reference. So I thought that was really, really important. Okay. So this is something that we could probably spend 30 minutes on alone. So atonement is the process where a person seeks forgiveness from reconciliation with God. So in the Old Testament, atonement was done through sacrifices. We spent a whole week about the 5 different kinds of sacrifices. And we really did a lot of study on that. And I'm really happy we have done that study because we really are bridging the gap here. They began to teach that good deeds could atone for bad deeds and that by pursuing good works coupled with genuine repentance, one could be forgiven. But I really like the last bullet point. It says, ever since the temple's destruction, atonement is now found through the selfless acts of prayer, charity, hospitality, repentance, and justice. So like what Susan was saying, it's about deeds. That's really how they find their atonement. So Susan, do you have anything to add there?
I'm sorry. What's up? No, you're good.
Okay. I can't see everybody's faces, so if y'all are like nodding your heads and stuff, I can't see it because the way I've never shared my screen before, so I'm still a little new with this. So, I've done my study. I just haven't done my tech study here. I've done my research. It's the tech stuff. I don't think I've done a PowerPoint presentation in years, so this is a little new for me. So, but yeah, it's a lot more about deeds and those sorts of things than the relationship. And I really found that to be a major difference between the two.
So a little Mormonish, right?
Well, then I guess we got to do a study on Mormon now.
No, I'm just curious.
But that's the research I have done. Yeah, Mormons are very much focused on deeds. Okay, so now I want to get into, before we get into worship, we really have to focus on the place where they worship. So this is kind of how I organize it. So a synagogue in and of itself is a building where they come together for services. It is also a house of study, and it's also a social hall. Kevin asked me a question which I have not researched, which is, can they have alcohol at the synagogue? I forgot to research that.
I just didn't know how social it was. You know,
yes.
That's the question.
Yes. In many ways, I kind of view it as the synagogue focuses a lot of the ways that our own buildings focus. It's a place for services, it's a place for study, it's a place for community. Also a social welfare agency where you collect things just like we collect things at our church. So in that respect, I didn't find it a lot different. They talked about the fact that it's also a place where you can have community meetings, whereas we do as well. We host things in the community. So in that respect, Okay. Now this is where I thought this was a little more interesting. I really wanted to get into the organizational structure of the synagogue. But before we do that, I want to give you a little taste. We're going to get, Susan and I, when we get to it, we're going to do this really toward the end of the study. But just to give you a little reference, the main three branches of Judaism are Reformed, Orthodox, and Conservative. And I'm sorry, I don't have a graphic for this. I just realized this morning that I needed to say this. So Reformed, Orthodox, and Conservative. And in relation, by no means are these exactly the way, but if you want to talk about it, like Reform is the most liberal, just like PCUSA is the most liberal. Then you've got Orthodox, which is kind of in the middle, similar to kind of like our EPC. And then you've got Conservative, which is the most conservative, like like PCA. So I'm only giving you that for reference so that you know, like Temple Israel is Reformed. So when you hear about Micah Greenstein in town, I know he taught Susan a class, he is Reformed. They are that is the most liberal branch of Judaism. Orthodox is the middle, and then Conservative is, of course, the most conservative. And then you got all those other branches that we'll talk about later. But there are a few references in this study to those three branches of Judaism. So I wanted to let that go ahead. So, and feel free to stop me with questions if you have any. Synagogues are independent. They really, they don't, like in the PCUSA or Methodism or whatever, we're a part of a diocese, there is some authority. These are really independent organizations who are a part of an association, for lack of a better word, but they really are independent, and which I found very interesting. They are run by a board of directors, whereas we call them elders or deacons, they call them boards. And I've actually seen this in like obits for prominent, I would say, Jewish people in the community. There was a man named Rudy Scheidt who I had met socially, who was a big philanthropist. And I remember in his obit, it talked about the fact that he had been chair of the board of directors of Temple Israel. So that is I'm just bringing that up because socially that is something you would see. So like if somebody says, you meet somebody and they say they're a member of the board of directors, that's what that means. I don't know how long their terms are or anything like that. The clergy are employees of the synagogue, hired and fired by the board of directors. Now this was very interesting. So yes, the synagogue hires and fires, on their own, but they can be kicked out of that association if they hire somebody from a different, like orthodoxy level. So this is a really good example. So Orthodox, which is the middle of the road, if they hire a Reform rabbi, which is considered more liberal, the Orthodox Union may say you can no longer be a member of the Orthodox Union because you have hired a rabbi who does not meet our standards.
But I mean, they could easily go join Reform.
But then that becomes a thing where the church then the synagogue may decide we are moving more in the Reform tradition, and yes, so they can.
It's a lot like moving up and down the scale of the PC.
And I don't know how easy or hard that is to move. I don't know if you were to leave PCUSA, there's a lot to that.
Yeah, because there's usually property involved.
Yes, and things like that. So, any questions or comments on that aspect of it?
Well, I think the last one was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Membership dues.
Kevin's all about the finances.
Well, no, I mean, I try.
Yeah, so like in the PCUSA, if a church leaves the PCUSA, like they may have to relinquish their building to the presbytery.
Yeah.
They don't get to maintain that. So yeah, the presbytery owns it.
So it's United Methodist.
Okay. So how is it in the Jewish organizations? Do they own their own property?
I understand that they are completely independent organizations, and the research I did was that, like the Orthodox Union, for example, doesn't own the building. They own the building, and
the church,
the
synagogue,
synagogue, and that board of directors. So it's just almost like, I guess, like a nonprofit has their own board of directors, and it is run by that board of directors.
Or like Baptist.
Yeah, and I mean,
right.
the best I could, and people that maybe were Baptists may know more than I do, but my understanding of the Baptist church is you are an independent church, a part of an association.
Yes.
Whereas that association doesn't dictate what you do. And that's kind of how I viewed this in my research. And I could be wrong, but they really made a point that they are independent. Now, Kevin made a point that I don't know, like, well, where does the rabbi's insurance come from? I don't know that. Does that have to be provided by this individual synagogue? What about a small synagogue in a small town that maybe doesn't have the means to do that? That I don't know, because I know that our pastors obviously are provided their insurance through the PCUSA.
I think it's the one who gives the biggest kickback. I'm sorry that I'm reading the last one. I mean, that just,
Well,
the last one's very
the
interesting.
last one is very interesting, and it
Point,
does lead to this. So the synagogues are financed through membership dues paid annually. And so, of course, Mr. Finance Guy over here thought that was just
yes, that's
crazy.
The most fascinating.
I mean, for the purchase of reserved seats.
For Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur.
So it's like season ticket holders. Licensing rights, right?
Yeah, like it's a PSL.
Yes, exactly.
License.
Yes. So, but they made a very big point that if you're not a member, and there's not room for everything on here, but just because you're not a member does not mean you can't come. The synagogues are open to everyone. But the idea is kind of like you're a member at GPC and you tithe, you come a lot, you're not a member, we still hope you're going to give. They hope that if you come and are not a member, you're still going to give, but they're not going to stop you. The joke was they're not going to ask you for your membership card at the door. So, but yeah, membership dues, they don't pass an offering plate. That is not done as a part of their service.
Then when you say like you're welcome, do you mean other Jewish people who are not members of that synagogue, or everybody?
Anybody. I mean, especially the Reform tradition is definitely the most open in my research. The Reform tradition, like I went on a couple of their church websites, and they are very much, when you come, this is what you can expect. We welcome everyone. Now, I'm sure the Orthodox and the conservative are welcoming, but you've got to follow a little more strict. It would be easier for a non-Jewish person to walk into a Reform synagogue because it is the most liberal. The best example I can give, when I worked at Emmanuel, we were part of a loose group of churches that included Balmoral Pres, Holy Spirit Catholic, the Lutheran Church right there on Poplar, and Temple Israel. So think about kind of the level of strict, I guess, conservativeness within your faith. Temple Israel was a part of that. So every Thanksgiving we got together and hosted a service. So those churches were very open to hosting other people. I guess I'm just saying that to say that those churches were all kind of along the same lines of openness and being willing to host other people. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I had not heard about this membership dues. This was a new thing for me, but they made a big point that it's not tithes. They do not pass a plate. You're not going to be asked for money when you walk through the door. It is, I guess it's a more understated thing, which, knowing what we know about Jews, that doesn't really surprise me. The paying for the seats, like the PSL thing, that was a little.
So instead of getting dirty looks for sitting in somebody else's seat, do they actually show their tickets and that's my seat?
Well, it's probably going to be like there is on baptism Sunday at our church, there's a reserved seat for that family.
Well, yeah, but I mean, on the big holidays, which they make a point of.
Yeah.
Which I think is important.
You're not there if you're not in your assigned seat.
Well, it's like at Woodland, like they auctioned off at the youth auction. I know Brad and Stacy bought it, like reserved seats for Grandparents' Day, and you had a reserved parking and you had a reserved seat, so you could just run in late. So,
yeah.
You got a reserved seat. You don't have to get there early.
So I guess they have reserved seats during the major holidays.
And you pay for it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I get that.
So, I knew this would get attention, and I knew our crowd would enjoy this, so I really wanted to talk about this. But, and the reason I focus some on this, I know we're focusing a lot on the theology and the history, but in our day-to-day, when we are interacting with people who are Jewish, these are the kind of things that we kind of need to know, I feel like, that would be helpful to know. Like I said, if you meet somebody who says they're a member of a board of directors, or, when they say they're a member of Temple Israel, okay, that's a little different. And Micah Greenstein, who taught Susan's class, he's fabulous. He and Steve Montgomery were really, really good friends. He spoke at Steve Montgomery's funeral. So Micah is really, to me, one of the biggest leaders in Judaism in our city. He's the rank and file, at least for me, and maybe y'all can say differently, if you were to say name a leader in the Jewish community, Micah's the name you hear about, and he is Reformed.
Yeah.
So,
And maybe that's why we hear about it.
And true, and maybe that's why. And Susan, I know he taught a class to you, so maybe you can speak to that, but.
Yeah, everything you said is correct. He's just a great leader in the Jewish community, but just a good person, and just, yeah, I can't think of anything bad anyone would say about him at all. So. And
he's just approachable. Like, you feel like you could go and ask him. I've met him in person, like when I was 25 and moved here and didn't know what I didn't know. But when we would have those Thanksgiving services, he was just very approachable. He was very young. I think he was an assistant or whatever they call an associate rabbi at that point. But yeah, he's been a leader here for a long time. So talking about rabbi, we're going to talk a little bit more about the role of the rabbi, if I can get my thing to go here. Okay. The rabbi is really the religious leader that is recognized in Judaism. He leads the services, and this is different because during the Old Testament times, there was the priesthood. So now, in current day Judaism, the rabbi. The priesthood was during the time of Aaron and Moses, and now we have our rabbis. Simply put, they are teachers who are educated in Jewish law to instruct the community and to answer questions and resolve disputes. So I didn't really find a lot about like an ordination, but they are educated, and I know that there are certain, and I'd have to spend more time, and gosh knows there's a lot of information here, but I know they go to school. I mean, there are schools for rabbis, so they are definitely educated, and they lead basically all the services.
Yeah. Can women be rabbis?
Yes, actually, there's a video we're going to see in a few minutes, and her name is Wendy Geffen, and she's a rabbi at a major Reform congregation in Chicago. So, but the work that I've done, women have a lot more roles and responsibilities in the Reform tradition than they do Orthodox and Conservative. And when we get to bar and bat mitzvahs, bat mitzvahs for girls are definitely recognized in the Reform tradition, and then in the Orthodox and the Conservative, there's not as much. So women definitely have a larger role in the Reform tradition than they do in the Orthodox and Conservative. And we'll get more specific into exactly which roles they are, but I know that in the Reform tradition, women have a lot of leadership roles. And matter of fact, I think and they may still do. I know Temple Israel at one point had an associate rabbi who was a woman. So it's fairly common, especially in the Reform tradition. Just making sure there was nothing else. So this was a little bit in my studies. It says, it is important to note that the rabbi's status as a rabbi does not give him any special authority to conduct a service. Any Jew sufficiently educated to know what he is doing can lead a service. And a service led by a Jew is every bit as valid as a service led by a rabbi. And in some communities, they don't have a rabbi, so they have a person that leads them. And I would say, having grown up in the country, sometimes we didn't have a pastor and we had a lay person leading it. So
like an elder, I guess, right? I mean, the equivalent, right?
Well, I mean, in the Methodist church, we just called them a lay leader.
Oh, okay.
You know, so I guess it just depends. But most of your larger congregations are going to have a professionally educated full-time rabbi.
Sure.
So, okay. Now I brought this up because I encountered this when I did some work with Temple Israel. It's a cantor. It was just really the only other, and I brought this up just because I was interested, and so I thought you would too. The cantor leads in prayer, but what I found is the cantor often led a lot of almost more of the music. And Susan, if you have anything to say, but whenever we were dealing with Temple Israel as a church, it was like we dealt with Rabbi Greenstein, and then we dealt with the cantor, and he was dealing with the music because the churches kind of took different roles. And so obviously Temple Israel, being so big, would have a professional cantor. In smaller congregations, the rabbi can do this as well. But it's just, the person who assists with the rabbi leads in the services. And there are professional cantors, and then there are cantors who just do it out of their background.
Are cantors just in the Reformed?
I think cantors are in every
Oh.
one, and it's just another person that helps. I did not find this not to just be a Reformed specific thing. But again, we've got to do more. When we get to that, we'll definitely talk about the differences between the different ones. And there's so many different branches. Just like if somebody was leading a study on Christianity to talk about all the different denominations, there's just be no way to do it. So, but yeah, it's just a good thing to know about the cantor. Okay, so any questions before we have, I call it, we have two little fun slides because we needed a little break from the deep talk here. Okay, so what time are we doing okay on time? Okay, so before we go deep here and get into the births and stuff, it's time to do something fun. So, oh, and by the way, the cantor really helps the young people get ready for their bar and bat mitzvahs. Like that's a big part. They really help them. So that's a big part of the cantor's role is to help prepare them for that.
So are they kind of like a youth director too, you think?
No, it's more of a teacher.
Okay.
Because they're really skilled in the teachings and the Torah and the readings, so they're helping them get ready for their service. Okay, so
Rebecca,
Kevin laughed.
Are there
Go
any
ahead.
questions? I literally was thinking in my head, I'm ready for the yarmulke. Like I don't know why.
But I did good.
Or whatever. Okay, sorry. Just seeing the picture made me think I'm ready for this.
Well, I can tell you that when I was reading on the church website for that, the Chicago church, she basically said at our synagogue, we do wear yarmulkes, and like if you were to come and visit, they actually have like a basket of them, and you have them that you can borrow. So, and then different traditions, and we're going to talk about the yarmulke, but in different traditions, some women are required to have head coverings and some are not, and there's different levels of that. But the yarmulke is just something that I thought we ought to bring up because it's just something we see. Like I'm at the grocery store and I see, because we live near a Jewish synagogue, we see yarmulkes. So, okay, I found this interesting. So, and I can't see part of it, so I have to look at my notes. But, you know, it's just a commonly known practice. It just comes from the idea of respect, covering your head. And I did find this was interesting because I do want to point out where things are similar and different to where we come from. So in the Western culture, think about this. Our sign of respect is to remove your hat. In the Jewish synagogue, you cover your head. So that's like when you talk about going into a different country or respecting someone's culture, I think that's something you need to remember, because like if somebody were to wear a baseball cap in church on Sunday, that would not be good. But in the Jewish synagogue, you should cover your head. And this is very important. There are commandments within Judaism and there are customs. This is a custom. It's a common practice. It is not mandatory. You do not need to do this to follow the commandments. So I thought that was really.
So is it a custom of the more conservative denomination, like a denomination?
And I need to do more research on exactly what's specific. I know some of the traditions wear them all the time, whereas some traditions only wear them during the service.
Or during specific times.
Well, and I can definitely see like this. When I was reading about this church's website, the synagogue in Chicago, they talked about the fact that you would pick up one when you come in. So it may be that in the Reformed tradition, they wear them more in the synagogue, whereas in other traditions, they wear them everywhere.
Exactly, yeah, during certain times.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
So,
okay.
If anybody has anything to say about that, but that's just, I know there are a lot of Jewish people that we interact every day that are Jewish and don't wear a yarmulke, but then there are some traditions that wear them everywhere.
You go to the church. Our kids used to take martial arts there, and some people would have them on the whole time, even when they were working out, and some people would not wear them at all. So, but you can be a member there and not be Jewish. So,
right. But like I know my brother's an attorney, and there are Jewish attorneys in his law firm that don't wear a yarmulke every day. So, but what I don't know, and what Susan, we can look at further, is if it's by group. Whereas all conservatives wear a yarmulke every day, Orthodox, maybe, I just don't know where that falls. But I would definitely say, just because the Reform are more liberal, that like for example, when I visited Temple Israel, they had a brochure, I think I mentioned this before, it says, mixed marriage, we are the church for you. Okay, so they're definitely more open to just things in general. You probably would not find that at a conservative congregation.
But I mean, some could wear it as a reminder.
Right. Well, I mean, Susie chooses to wear
Exactly.
her pastoral
Kind of the same
collar,
thing, yeah.
and that's not a
It's not
Presbyterian
required.
thing, but
Yeah.
it's a choice.
Yeah. That's what I'm
So,
wondering.
Okay, so here's our other little break before we get deep. So, Anthony, I don't know if you were thinking about this, but we'll see. Okay, Mazel Tov. Okay, so when I was doing my fun little research for clip art, because I couldn't just have black and white, it was just too boring. So I kept seeing Mazel Tov everywhere, and I was like, well, I need to know what that means, because I can't do a study on Judaism without knowing what Mazel Tov means. So it means good luck. But the biggest thing is, it's not good luck on something you hope happens. It's more like congratulations on something that has happened.
So on your good luck.
You are hoping you're congratulating them on the good luck that they have had, not hoping they have good luck. So like, you would say Mazel Tov upon the fact that they have graduated, or that but not hoping that, you wouldn't say Mazel Tov before somebody's about to take the MCATs or the boards or something like that. So, it sounds kind of silly to talk about this, but at the same token, we need to kind of know when that phrase is used. I would personally never use the phrase because I would be afraid that I would use it incorrectly, and I think it's kind of weird. But if somebody were to use it, I want to make sure we're using it correctly. So I know that's just a little aside. So
I think they say it like it at a wedding or after a wedding, receptions, and
True.
yeah,
That makes sense.
because congratulations on your good luck of your happiness of
exactly
getting married.
Yeah. But definitely not, I just think the biggest thing is it's after the event, not before. So, but anyway, so, again, there's so many sidelines like Susan talked about last week, you can start going down the rabbit hole. And I spent a lot of time, but I could have spent a whole lot more time. So, okay. So, the Sabbath or the Shabbat, same term, but we talk about the Sabbath. So the Torah declares that God expects people to keep the Sabbath day holy. For strict adherents, this means the time of rest between sundown Friday to sundown Saturday. There is a list of 39 comprehensive things that you are not supposed to do. Examples include riding in a car, lighting or extinguishing a fire, baking, sewing, and I thought this was interesting, writing 2 or more letters. And then, again, we keep talking about the Reform. More liberal adherents do not follow these commandments as strictly. Now, I can't tell you what exactly Reform would tell you to follow and not to follow. I do know, and we'll get into this a little bit later, you cannot have a wedding on the Sabbath, but you could, the bris, the ritual circumcision, that can be held because it's supposed to be held a certain number of days after the baby is born. But they also value life, and anything that would be life-saving can happen on the Sabbath. If you are a doctor and you are called in, that supersedes this commandment of Sabbath. Life always supersedes the Sabbath. So they would never tell you to harm someone in any way due to the Sabbath.
Or not help someone.
Or not help someone. Yeah. So that was a big thing. Okay. I'm trying to get to the next slide. Okay. And just because I'm, like my little clip art. So this is just a few examples. This was just a slide I found. And I'm sure this varies depending on how conservative you are. But just, don't do housework, don't use electronic devices. But again, looking back when I was growing up, we didn't do much on Sundays either. We had blue laws in South Carolina. So no stores were open, hardly anything was open, but that has changed. And so where they fall on this, and it may again be a personal decision, but like they said, the Reform is a little more loose on this as opposed to definitely the conservatives. We live close to, I'm not sure if it's an Orthodox or a conservative, but we see a lot of people walking to church.
I think it's Orthodox. I would think it'd be Orthodox.
It's either Orthodox or conservative, but we
Yeah.
see them walking to synagogue
On Saturday.
on Friday night and Saturdays. So they're not driving. So my understanding is, driving is technically like lighting a torch. You have to start your car. So a lot of people need to live, if you are of that tradition, you need to live close enough to be able to walk to your synagogue.
That's right. Baron Hirsch, which is in East Memphis, is Orthodox,
Okay.
and they have something they officially called an Erev. I don't know exactly how to spell it, but it's an area that's within walking distance, and that's where they're supposed to live so they can walk to synagogue.
That totally makes sense. We see them walking on Yates to their synagogue.
Yeah, it's at Yates and Shady Grove.
Yep,
They're also really not supposed to flip on a light switch because that's making fire.
That's making fire. Yep.
Yeah.
And then I think there's a conservative synagogue even further on Yates off of Rich Road, kind of close to like 240 in Yates, kind of on the other side of Walnut Grove. I think that's the more conservative one. But yeah, so we see a lot of them walking, and because like I said, we live off of Poplar and Estate. So but yeah, but that's interesting, Chuck, that they almost have like a radius on which they're supposed to live.
Yeah. It has a name. It's interesting.
Yeah. It totally makes sense. And we see them walking, to their Sabbath services. Okay. So I tried to do research on the order of worship, and it's a lot. So most Jewish communities hold Shabbat or Sabbath services on both Friday night and Saturday morning, and sometimes on Friday afternoon, just any time during that Sabbath period. Each service differs from congregation to congregation, but there are customs. So this is a video that I found from the rabbi that I was talking about, Wendy Geffen. She is a pastor. She is a rabbi at the North Shore Congregation Israel Reform Synagogue in Chicago. There is a website called Bim Bam that has lots of different videos about Judaism, and she can describe this here a lot easier and more quickly and succinctly than I can. So let's see if the video works.
Is there audio coming through with this?
Oh, are y'all not hearing the audio?
No.
No.
Y'all aren't hearing the audio?
Mm-mm.
I wonder. I'm glad y'all mentioned it.
Okay.
Susan, do you have any suggestions?
It's a YouTube video.
Yeah, it's a YouTube video.
Huh.
Okay.
Well, when the slides go out.
Well, I'll send y'all a link to the video when we're done. I guess if that's my first technological issue, we're doing good. Okay, well, I'm glad y'all mentioned it because I did not know that. So I'll send y'all the link to that. So I apologize. Okay, so she basically just goes through the order of service. What about my PowerPoint? Susan can probably help me. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll try to figure that out, and we'll watch that video next week. So I'll make a note of that. Sorry, y'all. The best laid plans. So I'll make sure that we get that. So, and that helps me. And luckily that was the only video that I had planned for this week. So I'll apologize. So basically she goes through the order of worship, and she can do a better job of that than I can. So we'll figure out how to do that. And,
if you're getting to a stopping point, I mean, we could start with that.
yeah, well, I'll do a couple more slides and
Okay,
then we'll get to a stopping point, and then we can discuss and see what questions people have. So, okay, so I'll make sure that I send that link out this week and y'all can look at it. It's just a 3-minute video that does a really good overview of the Shabbat services. But Shabbat services are held, there are prayers, like some people would go to prayer every day, just like at a Catholic church. I know there are people who go to mass every day. But the biggest time is to go to a Shabbat service, similar to what we do. We would go to a Sunday service. So that's kind of not the mandatory thing. But again, there are certain things that you can and can't do. The biggest thing for me is weddings, which we'll get to probably next week, or almost certainly next week, cannot be held during Sabbath. So a lot of weddings are either held right after sundown on a Saturday, or held on Saturday, or held on Sunday, because some of their weddings can last up to 6 hours. So obviously if they don't start until after sundown, and depending on the tradition, the rabbi cannot even drive until after Sabbath is over. So say sundown's at 7:30, they've got to be able to drive to the service and get ready to perform the wedding. So you have to factor that into the wedding start time.
Well, all right, I've never been to a Jewish wedding, but how would they determine that months out when they determine the date that they're going to get
Because
married?
you know what time sundown is. There's like charts for that.
But you have to look at a chart. And
I'm
say
sure you would.
Service or ceremony will start at 8:10.
Just like when I'm planning the walk in South Carolina, we know what day high tide is and how high tide is. You know,
Okay.
we're getting married on October 25th. You look at the chart and go, okay, sundown's at 7:30. We can get married, and the pastor the rabbi has to drive 30 minutes, so we can get married at 8:15.
Okay. All right.
So I have never been to a Jewish wedding either. So those of you who have, next week, bring your stories. We'll talk about it. So, and we'll talk a little bit about this, the dietary laws and kosher. To be honest, we talked about this a decent amount in our study. It really just goes back to those laundry list of things in Leviticus and the commandments of things to do and not do. So basically kosher, you know, there's food that is ritually acceptable according to the law, that is not prepared by a Gentile or is not prepared with utensils. It is considered kosher if it has been prepared according to the strict dietary laws. And then it's just, if you do not do that, you are unclean for the day and you are unpleasing and unacceptable to God. So we could spend 2 weeks on kosher, and I'm not going to go into that a whole lot. I will do some research next week, since we've really talked a lot about Reformed, Orthodox, and Conservative, and figure out which ones follow it more strictly. I know from practice at Medtronic, we had doctors who would tell their sales rep that they were kosher, and we would go to all this effort to get a kosher meal, and then they would see barbecue ribs for everybody else, and all of a sudden they're eating barbecue ribs. So, you know, and I'm sure that's everywhere. So I think different people hold themselves to different standards, as most of us do in our own religious, you know, followings. But I did think it was interesting that Will this morning said specifically, because I wrote it down, he said, it's about what you say more than what you eat. And he's speaking to his disciples who were Jewish, who are now following him. So he made a point. So I kind of brought that into, I guess if you want to say, why are we not kosher? I guess you could almost point to that. Like, Jesus is saying, it's not about some of those things. It's more about what you say. And I know it may be a stretch there. So feel free for comments. I feel like I'm definitely been on okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that I can actually see y'all. And we can
See who's sleeping.
Yeah, we can see who's sleeping, and so I apologize for the video not working. So next week we're going to get into the life cycle stuff, but as you can see, I mean, that took us 40 minutes just to get up to Sabbath. So next week it's going to be the breasts, which, you know, It's always fun to talk about. The bar and bat mitzvah, the wedding, and then I'm going to do some more research into funerals and things like that. So any comments or anything I didn't cover that I need to do a little more research on? Y'all are quiet all of a sudden.
One thing I've been kind of thinking about and wondering, and it's not terribly important, but being a finance guy, just numbers. Like I heard Drayton recently like pray and talk about 3 billion Christians on earth, and that number was like way higher than I was really expecting. Okay. But I wonder about the Jewish faith. You know, not necessarily an exact number, but like in comparison to Christians, and just taking that a step further. Like and this is totally stereotypical, but because I don't know a lot of Jewish people, I remember 2 or 3 years ago at when we have the in-between Sunday schools and we all come together, it seems like a rabbi came and talked to us, and it was the very kind of stereotypical brown beard, his accent, everything was just a little bit different. Like that's all I can picture. And then that makes me think about how many people there are that are Jewish, and like I cannot picture Indianola, Mississippi having a Jewish synagogue. I can pick every metro area in the US, got it. Pennsylvania, and I might be in the wrong spot. Okay, so here's my example. I grew up in a town of 2,000 people in the Bible Belt in South Carolina. I had a third cousin. My dad's first cousin moved to Philadelphia and married a Jewish man. And it was the big deal when I was little. Oh my gosh, you have a cousin who's married to a Jewish man. Like, that's what I grew up with.
But did she stay in Pennsylvania?
She stayed in Philadelphia.
So there wasn't one in
Kirbyville. No, believe me. You had to go to Columbia or Charleston.
So they're usually metro.
I mean, we didn't have a Catholic church. You had to go to at least a place of 50,000 to get a Catholic church, where I grew up.
And then and it's interesting to me too to think about. There's a lot of similarities to Christianity, and in terms of like what we studied last week, you know, the books of the Bible that are the same. So I don't know. All of this is really, really interesting and good for me to learn and think more about.
Well, I'm really glad we did that study on Old Testament, because Kevin and I keep going, this references the things we've already learned. And I think it's a really good bridge to Hebrews, because now we're going to talk about Hebrews, which is the fulfillment of the Old Testament. And then there's going to be a lot of throwbacks in Hebrews back to the Old Testament. So I think this is really, really good. And also just from a practical standpoint, like, you know, Chuck's like, I know somebody who goes to, you know, the synagogue or things like that. Like, we are in a major metropolitan area where we are going to encounter people who go to those different places.
It's totally fascinating to me. As a person who grew up in a small town in Southern Illinois, like not unlike your upbringing, probably, not a metropolitan area. My first encounter with a rabbi was, my father owns a chemical business, and I worked for him in the early 90s. And in order to get your product to be kosher approved, there is a rabbi who comes to the chemical business to do the process of looking at your business to make it a kosher approved business. I found that extremely fascinating. There is money that is exchanged in order for your business to be classified as kosher approved. And I know that's a part we subcategorize, because you could really talk extensively about this, but that's a real thing. As somebody who grew up in a Methodist church, I was blown away by it. Of course, my father was, but there are businesses that look for that business to be kosher approved in order to distribute and sell to them, especially food plants. Like if you have a chemical and you're selling to a food, I just thought it was completely fascinating. I'm like, so you're telling me that if it's not a kosher approved chemical or a product, and you want to sell to, let's say, Oscar Mayer, because Oscar Mayer wants to be kosher approved, that all down the chain has to be kosher approved. And there's a rabbi, and it's a real thing. There's money exchanged.
Well, and I found it fascinating when I did work at Medtronic. we hosted doctors who came in. So when the sales rep would call and say, hey, he eats kosher, we had to go through a lot of steps, and then sometimes they would say, okay, they're Jewish, but they aren't kosher. So just as long as you have barbecue chicken, because we had to serve barbecue. It's just that
It couldn't be pork.
It just couldn't be pork.
Oh.
So some of them were okay as long as there was barbecue chicken there. But then some ate kosher. So oftentimes we ended up going, there's a little deli at the JCC. Holy Cow, I think was the name of it. So we would get Holy Cow to do something. And we kind of, depending on the doctor, we showed that where this came from. Now, so that was a big learning experience for me as a an adult woman, but yeah, you're right. And like we live close to these two synagogues. So our Kroger over on Sanderland, we've got a whole kosher approved section. And I think the same Kroger on Kirby.
Yeah.
Both of those are the ones I think I see a lot of it. And then at our Kroger, we actually have a Kroger. There's a separate kosher deli. Like you've got your regular deli and then there's a smaller deli counter. So all of those meats and things like that.
Because it couldn't be contaminated.
Right, it cannot be mixed.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't have a kosher brisket next to a ham.
Mm-hmm.
Having lived in the East Coast and then I moved here, my boss thought I was Jewish for 10 years because of my last name.
Oh, my maiden name is Goodman, and you better believe that I think I mentioned this in our Sunday school class. There was an article about a basketball player from Maryland whose last name was Goodman, who was so yeah, we got that a lot. And my brother being at a law firm with a lot of Jewish people, he kind of jokes because I like people not knowing. He thinks it's fun that they don't know.
The fascinating part of that is people, if they interpret, and this is part of this class, after moving to New Jersey, where there's a heavy Jewish population, and then living here, and there's quite a few Jewish in the community, people treat you differently if they think you're Jewish. It's fascinating.
My cousin, the one I was talking about who married a Jewish person, her maiden name was Coker, and I can't remember what her last name was, her husband's last name was. His first name was Sherman, and I can't remember what it was, but she talked about being discriminated against from even in Philadelphia, like making a restaurant reservation. She said she would call, I remember sitting around at a Christmas, she said she would call and make a reservation for a restaurant and use his last name, and they couldn't get one, and she called back and say Coker, and they would get it.
Yeah, that was the philosophy behind the fake radio name thing, part of it, because people, if they think you're a Weiss or a Weiss in their head, they think of you differently.
I mean, that's a whole nother.
There's a whole subject chapter we could write on this, whether, how people, like if they hear Goodman, they might go, well, it's like that Saturday Night Live skit, Who's the Jew?
Yeah.
If you've ever seen it or not. It's on YouTube. It's really funny. If you
I need to link that in our next email.
Yeah, I'm not trying to be funny either. Like it's a real thing that people go through. And they, you're in a business meeting, you say your name and somebody thinks a certain thing about you. It's a rather fascinating discussion,
Yeah. And I think Memphis is, at least for me, an interesting place because we are in what many would consider the Bible Belt. But we do have a significant Jewish population here, And I know you were joking about Indianola, but I think there are little pockets of Judaism, like in the Mississippi Delta. So, I mean, we could do some research there, but I did some work down there for a nonprofit. And I think there are some little pockets where people just migrated or immigrated and ended up. So one other thing that I just thought about, there's a big deal about it being the synagogue, not the temple. That the temple was the Old Testament temple, so there are synagogues. So there's I don't think I really make my notes about it, and Susan may have something else to say about it. But the synagogue is the temple. A lot of the traditions say the temple will be rebuilt when the Messiah comes. So right now there is no temple. Oh, no. The temple was destructed. And so right now there is no temple. So don't make the mistake of saying you go to a temple. Susan, do you have? She's nodding her head. So yeah. So that's it. It's really about the synagogue. So, and the reason I say that is in like the little bit I know about Mormonism, there are a few Mormon temples that you have to go to for certain rites and things like that. So, but in the Jewish world, there is no temple right now. That when the Messiah comes, the temple will be rebuilt. So I think since we've talked a lot about the temple in the Old Testament, that's something I don't want to leave ambiguous.
There's no temple at all.
Well, it's interesting because they call it Temple Israel,
right?
But yet they say that you're going to synagogue.
But it's Temple Israel Synagogue. Is that
Right.
Yes. Okay.
It's yeah. You don't go to temple, you go to synagogue.
But
I
some people
see.
refer to it going to temple.
I think
don't
they do, but like,
I don't know.
technically, the temple will
The temple.
be rebuilt
Okay, makes sense.
among the Messiah coming.
But I'm just sitting there thinking, during this time of COVID, they couldn't do what we're doing, right? They would have to be in person in the service. So why would we not hear more about outbreaks? I mean, and do they get exemptions from the health department because it's a religious belief?
Well,
To
I
do
think
that.
I'll know what I'll be studying for next week.
Yeah, I was thinking that when you were
Good
talking.
question.
Yeah.
Because wasn't that the big thing where, you know, the government was telling the churches what to do? So, yeah, that's a great question.
And I was thinking too, I mean, the 39 things you can't do on the Sabbath, someone had to have adopted rule number 38 to make it electronics, right? You know what I'm saying? Like,
But isn't that fire? Like, if technically you don't light a fire,
Oh, they
electricity to me is fire, right?
So
not to
they're kind
me.
of bundling
but-
it in.
But if your electricity is making
It is to them.
Yeah,
It is to them.
yeah, because
Electricity is
fire
fire.
means electronics, which means anything along those lines. Yeah, I remember Susan, you mentioned that at one of our,
Like turning on or turning
Yeah.
it off, it creates a spark.
but it really shouldn't.
Well, in some traditions, it's
Sometimes
interpreted that way.
it's a bad sign, right?
That is not what you want electricity to do.
Exactly.
It's sparking. There's something wrong.
I think that there are definitely a lot of variations of conservative Jewish and, like you said, strict by the letter. Like the engineer for the radio station is Jewish. He celebrates Hanukkah, Yom Kippur, all these. So he's in enough that he definitely recognizes those things. But yet on Sunday, if the radio station goes off the air, he goes to the transmitter tower and runs.
you mean
the
Saturday? Because Sunday would be okay. It would be a Saturday.
Saturday. He does it anytime. I mean,
Okay.
so I find that, I don't know how you could reconcile doing that job and a lot of these rules.
Wait, yeah, he's violated two right there,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Electricity and working.
Working and electric, I'm sure there's sort of variation, and I don't want to call it pick and choose. I'm not picking on anyone. Frankly, that happens in our church too, where you have, like, this isn't ideal. I'm sure this isn't even in the book of order when it comes to how we usually would run, but look, we're in a pandemic, it's 1918 all over again. So things they have to change in order to sort of get through, and I'm interested in how they feel about that, because at a certain point, I think we all on this earth make decisions that run counter to how ideally we were to operate if we were to follow everything by the strict, law. But so that's a fascinating compromise,
Yeah,
I
but
think
go ahead, Chuck.
I think the Reformed Jewish people do not follow the 39 rules of the Sabbath like the Orthodox or the conservative. Definitely, I know the Orthodox and conservative do, but the Reformed, they drive themselves to synagogue.
Yep.
The people at Temple Israel, they drive themselves to synagogue. I think they observe some things, but they don't follow the 39 rules. So maybe your guy at your station is not conservative or Orthodox.
I believe so. Yeah, I think that is in fact where he goes to synagogue. So
Because Temple Israel is, for those of you familiar, I would say it's kind of in the Lausanne area. It's kind of off of Massey, kind of up in that area. And it is a fairly large, I could kind of do my research. It's a pretty large congregation. So like Chuck was talking about, there would be almost no way for people to all live within walking distance of that synagogue.
yeah, that was what I was thinking. Plus, it's real estate is expensive there too, so, that's just being honest with you. Like
Maybe for that reason, right? It's highly sought.
Yeah. Like it's hard to live in that zip code.
Yeah.
So
Anthony, did you have a question?
I guess I was, and I don't know, and our lives have changed a lot, but it's almost, and this is an easy cop out, but just not practical for the way that, like for the US, everybody could not shut down at sundown on Friday and, get going again Saturday morning. I mean,
or actually sundown Friday to sundown Saturday. Yeah, for 24 hours.
Yeah. It just, and that's an easy, I mean, I don't know, it just wouldn't work.
Well, and it's interesting to me because, sundown changes. So we're so regimented. Well, like, okay, we can't, but if sundown's at 5 p.m., or whatever, so it's very interesting. But, the people who follow it, I mean, that's just part of their life.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to say they're wrong.
Oh, of course not.
I'm just thinking if all 400 million or whatever we have in the U.S. did that, then, the power plants, they'd have to shut down. I don't know. It's interesting.
Well, and if you think of biblical times, everything was geared around sundown because Ben Franklin hadn't done his thing yet. So, we didn't have microphones, so you had to yell. We didn't have electric, so you had to time it around sundown. I mean, I think it's, and you forget, I forget it, when you read the Bible. That's why it was so weird, not weird, but we just read the Old Testament, we were talking about animal sacrifices. Just like that, a lot of the things, to your point, Anthony, it's like the way that we've built our world now. Yeah,
you did a good job. That was, I didn't start with that. That was my thought in the beginning when this happened.
Yeah.
Seems, I'll say, relatively reasonable and feasible to be a devout, this sect of Judaism got it. But then fast forward a few thousand years, and it wouldn't work if all of society did that today.
No. Amazon
and
wouldn't
I think
allow
it is. I think it is fascinating because, I mean, even we hear from our ministers, like Sunday should be a day of rest, but then we fill it up as an own church with things. So I think it's a very interesting concept, but I mean, it's very biblical, and people who do try to take some time off on Sundays, it is a time of refreshing, and it is a time to feed your soul. So I definitely see the value in it. To what level you can do it in this society,
And I wonder too, sometimes this is not, I wonder how literal we take things sometimes. And when God said, okay, a week's going to be 7 days, rest on the seventh day. Well, okay, what if Wednesday is my day of rest?
Yeah.
I mean, what does it all have to be? It's regimented the exact same thing. We all do things together. I mean, could it be a little bit more metaphorical? And it is really important for you to take time and rest and do, self-reflection. It doesn't matter if it's Sunday or Tuesday or Friday, just do it. But I don't know.
I think you're right. Anthony. I think really that's God's intention. The Jews celebrate Sabbath on Saturday. We do on Sunday. There's Seventh-day Adventists that celebrate it on Saturday. But as long as you celebrate it one day, you honor it, But, we've just, when we grew up, as you mentioned earlier, we had blue laws. A lot of things were closed on Sunday, which actually was kind of nice because it forced people to just take it easy.
We did. The malls weren't open. Yep.
Yeah. I think we should go back. I think we should honor the Sabbath more, but it doesn't necessarily have to be Sunday. It could be another day, depending on your schedule, your work schedule.
Well, I was just thinking, like what Anthony said, like if you're a nurse or a doctor and your day off is Wednesday, maybe it's just the intention. It's the intention of it, So, but anyway, well, we have gone way over, but I will pick up with birth next week. So I didn't even get as far as I thought I would. Susan, I'll be in touch with you this week to make sure that I can get the video to run, but I will send out that link to the service. And so we will get into what we call the life cycle events next week. So.
And Anthony, were you asking earlier, like how many Jewish people are there in the world?
Yeah.
Compared to Christians and compared to Muslims, that'd be interesting.
Yeah, yes. I'm gonna try to do that. Maybe I can find like a grid that kind of does like what we call the major world religions. Yeah. And if you think about it, I mean, this really impacted me during Will's sermon. Like, they do no conversion, no evangelism here. Anthony and I are on the committee trying to hire a pastor for evangelism here, but they have lasted through no outward.
That is interesting.
Even really, evangelism is not the right word, but even just like trying to talk to people about it. Like, in theory, they should never go and say, hey, do you want to come to my synagogue? Like, that would, so the fact that they have lasted and through the diaspora and through the Holocaust and all of these, it's pretty amazing. I mean, at least for me when I thought about that. So. Okay. I bet I can find something. So that'll be really interesting. So, all right, well, I'll continue this next week. And who knows whether our kids will be at Sunday school or not. I'll be somewhere here on the computer leading it. So, but anybody have any prayer requests before we close? Everybody doing okay?
I do have a colleague. Her name is Nikki. She lost her mother this week. Her mother passed away on Thursday.
When I moved here in 1998, the associate pastor at Emmanuel, his name was Ray Chandler. He was fairly young. I mean, it was like his second appointment. His wife had a heart attack Thursday night and passed away suddenly. So I'd say he's in his early 50s. He's actually in Paducah. He's a pastor in Paducah. But his name is Ray Chandler. Just a really good guy, and they were just a really close family. So she just very much a surprise and had a heart attack and passed away Thursday. So just keep Ray and his family.
Chuck, how is your brother-in-law? Is it Bill? Your family member from last week we prayed for, is it Bill? Or?
His wife. He passed away back in June. So his wife and two kids, they're continuing to, mourn his loss and adjust. He was a lot older than his wife. His wife's 54.
Okay.
So she's now a widow at 54.
Oh, man.
He was 71, I think, 71, 72. So, but Melissa Benson and her kids. So thank you. I also forgot, I have another colleague in Little Rock who got COVID-19 and has been at home, but she now has pneumonia. She's now at UAMS in Little Rock. So really struggling. I've had two colleagues. That's my second colleague that's had it. One in Nashville and one in Little Rock.
Okay, well, I'm going to close with some prayer since it's almost noon. So, okay. Dear Lord, thank you for letting us come together to just continue our study that we began in the Old Testament to learn about this group of people that we really should know more about. And thank you for letting us to study and just kind of do a deep dive in that. Lord, I want to lift up Nikki, Ray and his family, Melissa and her children, and also Chuck's colleague in Little Rock, along with other people that are dealing with not only COVID-related illnesses, but the other people like to say that the non-COVID things, the things that we are all would be going through, whether COVID was happening or not, and just lift them up, and then lift up everyone, whatever school decisions they've had to make. This has been such a hard decision for everyone, and whether children are learning at school or at home, that we just bless them and that help them navigate this difficult time of masks, and everything is different. As best that we can do as parents to keep things as normal as possible, they're not the same. And just help us know the words and how to deal with our children and to best talk to them through these uncertain times, and to make things the least scary that they can be, so that they can continue to learn and grow as they should be. Jill always has to just be with us as we come out this coming week, and that until we can meet together again to continue studying your word. In your name we pray, amen.
Thank you.
Okay.
Very good. Thank you.
Thanks,
All right.
thanks very much, Rebecca.
Oh, y'all are welcome. It was really fun. I felt like I did more work on this than I did a lot of term papers in graduate school. So, but I enjoyed it a lot more than I did some of those term papers in graduate school. So it was a lot of fun. So, okay, we'll see y'all next week.
All right. Have a good week.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.
Thanks. Thanks.